5:14 p.m., November 30th, 2018. Somewhere above the Tasman Sea, Grace Millane pressed her face to the window of Air New Zealand flight ND100 and watched the clouds break apart beneath her. New Zealand was down there, somewhere beyond the haze, and she was almost giddy with the thought of it. She had been traveling for 6 weeks already. South America first, Peru and then onwards, and now the South Pacific. The gap year she had been planning since her second year at the University of Lincoln. The trip she had talked about at every family dinner, every weekend gathering, every phone call home. She was 21 years old, 5'6", brown-haired, smiling in nearly every photograph ever taken of her. She had studied advertising and marketing. She had graduated in September. She had a degree, a plan, a passport full of stamps, and tomorrow, December 2nd, she would turn 22. She would not see that birthday. She would not blow out candles. She would not open the card her mother had sent ahead. She would not FaceTime her father, David, as she had promised. She would not post the birthday selfie to Instagram that her friends were expecting. December 2nd would come, and Grace Millane would already be dead, her body folded into a suitcase in the room of a man she had known for fewer than 12 hours. A man she had met on Tinder. A man whose profile picture had shown a smiling, broad-shouldered New Zealander who said he worked in property. But that is getting ahead of the clock. For now, in this moment, Grace was alive. She was excited. She was arriving in Auckland, a city she had dreamed about visiting, and she had 2 weeks of hostels and hikes and harbour views mapped out in the Notes app on her phone. She landed. She collected her bag. She took the Skybus into the city centre and checked into Base Auckland, a backpacker hostel on the corner of Queen Street and Fort Street. It was noisy, sociable, full of travellers just like her. She showered. She changed. She texted her family to say she had arrived safely. That text would become one of the last normal communications the Millane family would ever receive from their daughter. 9 a.m., December 1st, 2018. Base. Auckland Hostel, Queen Street, Auckland CBD. Grace woke up in her bunk. It was a Saturday. Auckland was warm. The sky a hard, bright blue, the kind of blue that makes you feel like the whole world is on your side. She spent the morning doing what backpackers do. She explored the waterfront. She wandered through Britomart. She took photos. She browsed the weekend markets. She messaged friends back in Essex. She was relaxed, happy, doing exactly what she had saved for months to do. At some point during the day, she opened Tinder. This was not unusual. Grace used dating apps the way most 21-year-olds did in 2018. Casually, socially, sometimes just for fun. She had been swiping in different countries throughout her trip, meeting people for drinks, for conversation, for the fleeting connections that make solo travel feel less solitary. She was not naive. She was not reckless. She was a young woman using a technology that had been normalized across her entire generation. In a country that ranked among the safest in the world, she matched with a man who called himself Jesse. His profile said he was 26. It said he was from Auckland. The photos showed a stocky, dark-haired man with a wide smile. He looked by every surface metric ordinary, friendly, normal, the kind of local you might hope to meet on a Saturday night in a foreign city. Someone who could recommend a good bar, tell you where to find the best view of Rangitoto, maybe share a story about growing up on the North Island. His full name was Jesse Shane Kempson. He was not 26, he was 27. He did not work in property. He lived at the CityLife Hotel on Queen Street, but not because he was wealthy. He was living there under circumstances that would later emerge during trial. He had a history that no Tinder profile would ever reveal and that no first-date conversation would ever surface. He had prior complaints of violence against women. He had a pattern that the justice system had not yet connected into a single readable line. But Grace did not know any of this. She saw a profile. She swiped right. He swiped right. They matched. They began messaging. The messages were light, normal, unremarkable. He suggested meeting for a drink that evening. She agreed. She told him she was staying in the CBD. He told her he knew the area well. They settled on a time and a place. Grace spent the afternoon getting ready. She changed into a black dress and dark shoes. She did her makeup. She took one last look at herself in the mirror of the hostel bathroom. She picked up her handbag, her phone, her room key. She walked out into the Auckland evening. The air was warm. Queen Street was busy with Saturday night crowds. The city hummed with the particular energy of a Southern Hemisphere summer weekend. Grace walked south toward the meeting point, her heels clicking on the pavement. She was about to meet the man who would kill her. 5:45 p.m., December 1st, 2018, Central Auckland CBD. They found each other on the street. The meeting was captured, at a distance, on one of Auckland's many CCTV cameras. Two people walking toward each other with the slightly awkward body language of a first date. A greeting, a moment of adjustment, then. They fell into step together and walked toward the first bar. This is worth pausing on, because the CCTV footage from that evening would become one of the prosecution's most powerful tools. Auckland's CBD is dense with cameras, traffic cameras, building security cameras, ATM cameras, shopfront cameras. They capture everything, and they captured Grace and Kempson's date in fragments, frame by frame, location by location, like a stop-motion film in which the audience already knows the ending. The footage shows two people on what looks to any observer like a perfectly normal date. 6:15 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Andy's Burgers and Bar, Federal Street, Auckland CBD. Grace and Kempson arrived at Andy's, a casual bar and grill on Federal Street. The interior CCTV captured them clearly. They sat at a table. They ordered drinks. Kempson drank beer. Grace drank cocktails. They talked. They laughed. Grace leaned forward at several points, engaged, animated, the way she looked in almost every photo her family had of her. She was having a good time. This was the kind of evening she had come to New Zealand for, a local showing her around, a story she could tell her friends. They stayed at Andy's for some time. The camera footage shows them ordering multiple rounds. Grace appeared comfortable, relaxed. Kempson was attentive, facing her, mirroring her body language. To anyone watching the CCTV in real time, they would have looked like any young couple on a Saturday night in the city. But CCTV does not capture intent. It captures surfaces. It captures proximity and gesture and the passage of time, but it does not capture what is happening behind a person's eyes. It does not record the calculations being made. It does not flag danger. The footage from Andy's shows Grace alive, happy, and unaware. 7:30 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Various locations, Auckland CBD. They left Andy's and moved to a second venue, then a third. The CCTV trail picks them up and loses them, and picks them up again as they walked through the CBD, stopping at different bars. The pattern is consistent: drinks, conversation, movement. Grace growing slightly more animated as the evening progressed, the way anyone does after several cocktails over several hours. Kempson staying close, guiding his hand occasionally on her back or her arm. At one point, they were captured on camera entering a Mexican restaurant and bar. They stayed. They drank more. They ate. The evening was deepening, the light outside shifting from summer twilight to darkness. The streets grew louder, busier. Auckland's Saturday night crowd thickened around them. Grace messaged a friend during the date. The content of that message, which was later recovered from her phone, was upbeat. She told her friend she was on a date with a nice guy. She said he was a good match. She was enjoying herself. She used language that suggested she felt safe, comfortable, and maybe even a little excited about where the evening might go. This is the cruelest part of the CCTV record. Not the footage itself, but the knowledge that accompanies it. The viewer, the jury, the public, the family watching from the gallery, all of them know what is coming. Grace did not. She was living in the present tense, in the warmth of a summer night in a beautiful city, on a date that was going well. She had no reason to be afraid. No alarm had sounded. No instinct had fired. The evening felt exactly like what it appeared to be. It was the last evening of her life. 9:41 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Central Auckland CBD. The pair left the last bar. CCTV captured them walking along the street in the direction of the CityLife Hotel. Grace was walking close to Kempson. At one point, they appeared to be holding hands. They were slightly unsteady, the way two people are after several hours of drinking, but they were upright, walking, talking. Grace appeared to be going willingly. No distress, no hesitation. She was walking toward his hotel because that is what the evening had become, and she had made a decision, as adults do, to go with him. There is nothing in the footage that suggests coercion at this point. Nothing that suggests force or manipulation or fear. That is what makes it so difficult to watch, because the footage shows consent to proximity, to company, to walking together through the warm Auckland night, but it does not and cannot show consent to what would happen behind a closed door. The CityLife Hotel sits on Queen Street, a tall glassed building that functions as both a hotel and serviced apartment complex. Kempson was staying on one of the upper floors. They entered the building together. 9:43 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Lobby of the CityLife Hotel, Queen Street, Auckland, CBD. The lobby CCTV captured them entering. They walked across the foyer toward the elevators. Kempson pressed the call button. They waited. The doors opened. They stepped inside. 9:45 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Elevator, CityLife Hotel. The elevator camera captured the last known footage of Grace Millane alive. She was standing next to Kempson. She appeared relaxed. In some frames, she was looking at him. In others, she was looking at the floor. The footage is grainy, slightly bluish, shot from above at the angle that all elevator cameras use, the angle that flattens people and makes them look smaller than they are. Grace was wearing her black dress. Her handbag was over her shoulder. She was standing in the way that people stand in elevators, slightly turned inward, waiting for the doors to open. The elevator rose. The doors opened on Kempson's floor. They stepped out together and walked down the hallway toward his apartment. The CCTV footage ends there. What happened next was reconstructed from forensic evidence, digital records, Kempson's own internet search history, and the physical evidence found in the apartment. Grace Millane entered that room alive. She did not leave it. Sometime between 9:45 p.m. on December 1st and the early hours of December 2nd, Jesse Shane Kempson strangled Grace Millane to death. The pathologist's report would later confirm that the cause of death was sustained pressure to the neck, applied for a period of between 5 and 10 minutes. That is not a momentary act. That is not an accident. 5 to 10 minutes of continuous pressure requires effort, requires intent, requires the conscious decision to keep pressing while the person beneath you struggles and then stops struggling. December 2nd arrived while Grace's body lay on the floor of that apartment. It was her birthday. She was 22 years old for a matter of hours, and she was already dead. 12 a.m., December 2nd, 2018. Apartment, CityLife Hotel, Auckland. The clock turned midnight. Grace Millane's 22nd birthday had technically begun. Somewhere in Essex, her mother, Gillian, had already posted a birthday message. Her father, David, was planning to call later that day. Her brother, Declan, had sent a message. Her friends were posting on her Facebook wall the usual stream of birthday wishes and inside jokes and heart emojis that accompany every young person's social media on their birthday. None of them knew. In the apartment on the upper floor of the CityLife Hotel, Kempson was awake. What he did in the hours immediately after killing Grace would become some of the most damning evidence at trial. The prosecution would present his actions not as those of a panicked man who had accidentally caused a death, but as those of a calculated individual who understood exactly what he had done and moved immediately to conceal it. He took intimate photographs of Grace's body. This fact, presented at trial with appropriate restrictions, was one of the most harrowing details of the case. The jury heard that Kempson had photographed Grace after her death, in poses that suggested not grief or shock, but something far darker. The prosecution argued that this demonstrated a total absence of remorse, a predatory mindset that continued even after the killing was done. He then left the body where it was and went to sleep. The next morning, while Grace's family was waking up in England expecting a birthday phone call, Kempson began to search the internet. 7:15 a.m., December 2nd, 2018. Apartment. CityLife Hotel. Kempson's phone records and search history were recovered by police and presented at trial. The searches painted a picture of a man who was not panicking, but planning. He searched for large duffel bags. He searched for suitcases. He searched for the term hottest fire. He searched for the Waitaki Ranges, a forested area west of Auckland. He searched for Kite Falls and other remote locations within the ranges. He was looking for somewhere to dispose of Grace's body. He was also browsing. He went back on Tinder. He started swiping again. He matched with another woman. He began messaging her. He arranged a date for that evening. Grace Millane's body was still in his apartment. The sheer mechanical coldness of this sequence would become one of the defining elements of the case. A woman was dead on his floor, and he was arranging his next date. The prosecution did not need to editorialize. They simply presented the timeline, the search history, and the Tinder messages, and let the jury absorb the weight of it. 10 a.m., December 2nd, 2018, Essex, England. 8,000 miles away, David Millane picked up his phone. It was early evening in New Zealand, mid-morning in England. He expected a call from Grace. She was reliable about that, about checking in, about staying connected, even as she traveled further and further from home. She had messaged from every stop on her trip: Peru, Argentina, New Zealand. She had told them about the hostels and the views and the people she was meeting. She had told them she was safe. He waited. The call did not come. He texted her. He tried FaceTime. He sent a message on WhatsApp. The double ticks appeared, but they stayed grey, not delivered, or delivered and not read. The distinction did not matter yet. What mattered was the silence. Grace did not respond. David was not immediately alarmed. She was in a different time zone. She might have been out. She might have had no signal. She might have been sleeping. There were 100 innocent explanations. He told himself all of them, the way parents do when the worry starts to prick at the edges of a normal day. He waited. 12 p.m., December 2nd, 2018, Auckland CBD. Kempson left the CityLife Hotel. CCTV captured him walking through the CBD carrying bags. He went to a storage facility. He went shopping. He bought a large red suitcase from a store in the central city, a purchase that was later confirmed by store records and CCTV. The suitcase was large enough to hold a person. He returned to the hotel. The footage from the hotel's internal cameras would later show Kempson making multiple trips to and from his apartment. The prosecution argued that he was cleaning, arranging, preparing. The apartment needed to be managed. Evidence needed to be dealt with. The body needed to be moved. At some point during the afternoon of December 2nd, Kempson placed Grace Millane's body inside the red suitcase. 4 p.m., December 2nd, 2018, Essex, England. David Millane still had not heard from Grace. The silence had lasted all day. He began contacting her friends, the ones he knew traveled with her or stayed in touch. Had they heard from her? Had she posted anything? Was she online? No one had heard from her. The worry that had been a background hum became something sharper. David knew his daughter. He knew her patterns. She did not go dark for this long. Not on her birthday. Not without telling someone. He began to feel the first edge of real fear, the kind that sits in the stomach and refuses to be reasoned away. He contacted the hostel where she had been staying. Base Auckland confirmed that Grace had checked in, but had not returned the previous night. Her belongings were still in her room. Her bed had not been slept in. 6 p.m., December 2nd, 2018, Auckland CBD. While Grace's father was beginning to panic on the other side of the world, Kempson was getting ready for his second Tinder date. He showered. He changed. He went out to meet another woman at a bar in central Auckland. The date proceeded normally. The woman later told police she noticed nothing unusual about Kempson's behavior. He was friendly. He was talkative. He bought her drinks. He seemed perfectly at ease. Grace Millane's body was in a red suitcase in his apartment. The woman he was with had no idea. She was sitting across from a man who had killed someone fewer than 24 hours earlier, and she did not know. This is the detail that kept people awake after the trial. The detail that made Kempson's case different from a crime of passion or a drunken accident. The ability to sit calmly in a bar, to charm a stranger, to smile and flirt and behave as though nothing had happened, while a dead woman lay folded in a suitcase a few blocks away. The prosecution argued that this was not the behavior of a man in shock. It was the behavior of a man who had done what he intended to do and moved on. 9 p.m., December 2nd, 2018. Essex, England. David Millane made the call he had been dreading. He contacted the New Zealand police. He reported his daughter missing. The report triggered a cascade of actions that would rapidly accelerate over the next 48 hours. New Zealand police took the details. Grace Elizabeth Millane, 21 years old, British national. Last known location, Auckland CBD. Last contact, December 1st. No known associates in New Zealand. Traveling alone. The file was opened. The search began. December 30, 18. Auckland Central Police Station, Auckland CBD. New Zealand police assigned a team to the case. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, a veteran of the Auckland CIB, took the lead. The investigation moved quickly. Grace's phone records were requested. Her bank card activity was traced. Her hostel was visited. CCTV footage from the CBD was pulled and reviewed. The picture emerged fast. Grace had been on a date. She had gone to multiple bars in the central city. She had been seen on camera with a man. She had entered the CityLife Hotel at 9:43 p.m. on December 1st. She had not been seen on any camera since. The man she was with needed to be identified. The police worked backward from the hotel. They obtained guest records. They cross-referenced the CCTV footage. They identified the floor. They identified the room. They identified the guest registered to that room, Jesse Shane Kempson. They ran his name. The results were troubling. Kempson had prior encounters with law enforcement. There were complaints, allegations, a history that painted a pattern of behavior toward women that had not yet resulted in conviction, but that taken together formed a silhouette that any experienced detective would recognize. They needed to find him. They also needed to find Grace. December 3rd, 2018, afternoon, Auckland. Detective Inspector Beard held the first press conference. Grace's photograph was released to the media. The image that went out showed a young woman with brown hair and a wide smile, the kind of photograph that parents keep on the mantelpiece, the kind that gets shared a million times on social media when someone goes missing. The police asked for the public's help. They asked anyone who had seen Grace after December 1st to come forward. New Zealand responded immediately. The story cut through the noise of the news cycle with the kind of velocity that only certain cases achieve. A young British woman, alone on her gap year, missing in Auckland. The city felt it. The country felt it. New Zealand trades on its reputation as a safe, welcoming country for travelers. The idea that a foreign visitor could disappear in the heart of Auckland struck at something fundamental about how New Zealanders see themselves. Tips began coming in. December 3rd, 2018, evening. CityLife Hotel, Auckland. Police executed a search warrant on Kempson's apartment at the CityLife Hotel. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Though the details of the search were not immediately released to the public, the apartment had been cleaned, but not well enough. Forensic teams found evidence of Grace's presence. They found blood. They found signs of a struggle. They found digital evidence on devices left in the room. Grace's body was not in the apartment. Kempson had already moved her. December 4th, 2018. Auckland. Jesse Shane Kempson was located and taken into custody. He was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Grace Millane. During questioning, he gave a version of events that would become the foundation of his defense at trial. He admitted that Grace had come to his apartment. He admitted that they had been intimate. He claimed that she had asked him to choke her during sex, that it was consensual, and that she had died accidentally as a result. He said he had panicked. He said he did not know what to do. He said he had placed her body in the suitcase because he was frightened. The police did not believe him. The search for Grace's body continued. Detectives traced Kempson's movements after December 1st using cell tower data, CCTV, and financial records. They found that he had rented a car on December 2nd from a rental agency in the central city. The rental records showed the car had been driven west toward the Waitaki Ranges. This aligned with the Google searches found on his phone. Waitaki Ranges, Kaita Falls, Scenic Drive. a search team was dispatched to the ranges, December 8, 2018. Waitaka Ranges, West Auckland. The Waitaka Ranges sit about 40 minutes west of central Auckland. They are dense, green, tangled with native bush. The Korean Remu trees grow tall and close together, blocking out the light. The tracks that wind through the ranges are popular with hikers, but off-track, the bush becomes impenetrable within meters. It is the kind of landscape that swallows things, the kind of place where, if you did not know exactly where to look, you could search for weeks and find nothing. The police knew approximately where to look. Cell tower data from the rental car's GPS and Kempson's phone placed him in a specific area of the ranges on December 2nd. The search teams focused their efforts on a stretch of bush near Scenic Drive, a winding road that climbs through the forested hills west of the city. On December 8th, 1 week after Grace Millane was last seen alive, search teams found the red suitcase. It had been dragged off the road and pushed into the bush. It was partially concealed by undergrowth. Inside was the body of Grace Elizabeth Millane. She was identified by fingerprint comparison and DNA. She had been dead for a week. Her body had been compressed into the suitcase, her limbs folded, her frame contorted to fit the dimensions of the bag. The forensic pathologist confirmed that the cause of death was pressure to the neck sustained for a period of between 5 and 10 minutes, consistent with manual strangulation. There were no other significant injuries. She had not been beaten. She had not been stabbed. She had been strangled, slowly and deliberately, with enough force and duration to extinguish her life. The pathologist's finding on the duration was critical. 5 to 10 minutes. That is not a squeeze that goes wrong. That is not a hand that slips. 5 minutes is 300 seconds. 10 minutes is 600. Anyone who has ever held their breath for even 60 seconds understands the scale of that time frame. The prosecution would later argue that this duration was incompatible with accident, incompatible with a momentary loss of control, incompatible with anything other than the sustained, intentional application of lethal force. Grace was brought down from the ranges and returned to her family. She had been found. She was coming home, and not the way anyone had imagined. December 9th, 2018, Auckland. Detective Inspector Beard held a press conference. His voice was steady, but the weight of it showed. He confirmed that a body had been found in the Waitaka Ranges and that it had been identified as Grace Millane. He confirmed that a man had been arrested and charged with her murder. He did not name the suspect. Under New Zealand law, there were name suppression orders in effect. The man charged with killing Grace Millane could not be publicly identified until the courts decided otherwise. This became one of the most contentious aspects of the case, with international media, particularly British outlets, pushing against the suppression order. In the age of social media, name suppression is a fragile construct. The name leaked. It spread online. But the formal suppression remained in place for months. Beard then did something unusual. He directly addressed the way some media outlets had been covering the case. He noted that some commentators had focused on the fact that Grace had met her killer on Tinder, had gone drinking with a stranger, had gone back to his hotel. The implication, never stated outright but hovering beneath the surface of certain coverage, was that Grace had somehow contributed to her own death by making choices that were, in the judgment of these commentators, unwise. Beard rejected this. His statement was clear. Grace Millane was a young woman who had done nothing wrong. She had gone on a date. She had trusted someone. The responsibility for what happened lay entirely with the man who killed her. This moment resonated across New Zealand and beyond. It reframed the conversation. It redirected the focus from the victim's choices to the offender's actions. It was a statement that would be cited for years afterward as an example of how law enforcement should speak about victims of violence. December 9th, 2018, Essex, England. David Millane flew to New Zealand. He arrived in Auckland, having lost his daughter. He had traveled 17,000 kilometers to a country he had never visited, to claim the body of his youngest child, who had gone there to see the world and had been killed by a stranger on a dating app. He stood at a lectern in front of the New Zealand media and spoke about Grace. He described her as the adventurous one, the one who wanted to see everything, go everywhere, try everything. He talked about her gap year, how excited she had been, how she had planned every leg of the trip with the thoroughness that defined her approach to everything. He talked about her graduation from Lincoln. He talked about her love of travel, her closeness to her family, her warmth. He thanked New Zealand. He thanked the police. He thanked the strangers who had laid flowers and left notes and lit candles for a woman they had never met, but who had somehow become theirs. He was composed, dignified, and utterly broken. The press conference remains, to this day, one of the most difficult pieces of footage from the entire case, not because of what David Millane said, but because of what he did not say. The rage, the confusion, the why her, the why this, the why at all of it was there, held behind a face that was trying very hard to keep it together for the cameras. He asked for privacy. He asked for time. He took his daughter home. December 2018, Auckland, New Zealand. The city mourned. Vigils were held across Auckland. Hundreds of people gathered in public spaces, holding candles, leaving flowers, standing in silence. The outpouring was not just grief, it was guilt. New Zealand felt responsible. This young woman had come to their country, seeking adventure, beauty, and welcome. She had found death, the national self-image, the one that says, "We are safe, we are kind, we are the good guys," cracked along a line that ran straight through the heart of the case. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern addressed the Millane family directly. She offered New Zealand's condolences. She expressed the country's sorrow. She said that Grace had come to New Zealand to experience the best of what the country had to offer, and that New Zealand should have kept her safe. The statement was not political theatre. It reflected a genuine national reckoning with the fact that a visitor had been killed, and that the systems that should have protected her, the background checks, the legal history, the red flags in Kempson's past, had failed. The Sky Tower, Auckland's most recognizable landmark, was lit in white to honor Grace. The harbour bridge was illuminated the same way. White ribbons appeared on lampposts and shop windows. The message was simple. We see her. We remember her. We are sorry. The vigils spread beyond Auckland. Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown, candlelight gatherings in small towns and large cities alike. New Zealanders who had never met Grace Millane stood in the summer evening holding flames and feeling the particular kind of sadness that comes when a stranger's death reveals something uncomfortable about your own country. Before Auckland, before the Tinder match, before the clock started, to understand what was lost on the night of December 1st, 2018, you have to understand who Grace Millane was before she boarded that flight. She grew up in Wickford, Essex, a commuter town about 30 miles east of London. The Millane family was close. David and Gillian, her parents. Declan, her brother. The family dynamic was warm, tight-knit. The kind of household where everyone showed up to everyone's events, where birthdays were planned weeks in advance, where Christmas required a seating chart because there were always too many people at the table. Grace was the adventurer. That was her role in the family constellation. She was the one who pushed the boundaries, who wanted to go further, see more, experience everything. She studied advertising and marketing at the University of Lincoln, graduating in September 2018 with a degree and a plan. The plan was the gap year. She had been talking about it for years. Southeast Asia, South America, Australia, New Zealand. She wanted the whole loop. The backpacker's grand tour, the route that has been worn smooth by generations of young Brits who save their money and fly east and discover that the world is bigger and stranger and more beautiful than anything they imagined from their bedroom in Essex. She left England in October 2018. Her Instagram, which was later reviewed extensively by media and by the court, told the story of the early weeks Peru, Machu Picchu, the salt flats, the markets, the mountains. Grace photographed everything. She posted with the frequency and enthusiasm of someone who could not believe her luck, someone who was genuinely amazed that the world looked like this, that she was in it, that it was hers to explore. Her friends described her as energetic, trusting, open. She made friends easily. She talked to strangers. She was the kind of traveler who ends up in the best seat at the best restaurant because she smiled at the right person. and asked the right question. She was not careless. She was confident. There is a difference, and it matters, because in the aftermath of her death, too many commentators collapsed the two. She arrived in New Zealand in late November. She was excited. New Zealand was the crown jewel of the trip, the destination she had been most looking forward to. She had 2 weeks planned, Auckland first, then perhaps the South Island, Queenstown, Milford Sound, the glaciers. She had a list. She had a schedule. She had a life. Jesse Shane Kempson, who he was before that night. The man who killed Grace Millane was not the person his Tinder profile suggested. Jesse Shane Kempson was born in 1991 in New Zealand. The details of his early life that emerged during trial and subsequent proceedings painted a picture of a deeply troubled individual with a history of predatory behavior toward women. Before Grace, Kempson had been the subject of multiple complaints from women. The details of these prior incidents were subject to legal restrictions during the initial murder trial, but subsequent trials revealed a broader pattern. Kempson was later convicted on additional charges relating to sexual violence against other women, charges that predated Grace's murder, but that were tried separately. The picture that emerged was one of escalating predatory behavior, a man who used charm and dating apps and the infrastructure of modern social connection as a hunting ground. He was not wealthy. He was not successful. He was not the confident, put-together professional his dating profile implied. He was, by the time he met Grace, living at the CityLife Hotel under circumstances that suggested instability rather than affluence. The hotel room was not a luxury suite. It was a residence, functional and anonymous, the kind of space that leaves no impression. His internet search history, recovered by police, revealed a man who was preoccupied with violent pornography. The specific searches were presented to the jury in closed session and were not made fully public, but the prosecution used them to argue that Kempson's claim of accidental death during consensual choking was not supported by his wider behavioral profile. The searches suggested a preoccupation with violence against women that went well beyond sexual experimentation. This was the man Grace matched with on Tinder, a man whose public face, his profile, his messages, his first date charm, bore no resemblance to the private reality of who he was and what he was capable of. November 2019, Auckland High Court. The trial of Jesse Shane Kempson. The trial began in November 2019, almost a year after Grace's death. Kempson was charged with a single count of murder. He pleaded not guilty. His defense rested on a single claim, that Grace Millane had died during consensual sexual activity, that she had asked to be choked during sex, a practice sometimes referred to as erotic asphyxiation or breath play, that he had complied with her request, that things had gone wrong, that it was a tragic accident, not a murder. The defense argued that Kempson was not a killer, but a participant in a consensual act that had an unintended outcome. They presented evidence of Grace's own internet searches, which included queries about BDSM and rough sex, to support the claim that she was a willing participant in this kind of activity. The prosecution rejected this narrative entirely. Their case was built on multiple pillars, each designed to dismantle the accidental death claim from a different angle. First, the duration. The pathologist testified that the pressure to Grace's neck had been sustained for between 5 and 10 minutes. The prosecution asked the jury to consider what that meant in practical terms. 5 minutes of continuous pressure to a person's throat. At any point during those minutes, Grace would have been struggling. She would have been losing consciousness. Her body would have been responding with the involuntary desperation of a person being asphyxiated, and Kempson would have had to continue pressing for minutes, through the struggling, through the loss of consciousness, through the cessation of movement. The prosecution argued that no reasonable person could sustain that level of force for that duration, and later claim it was accidental. Second, the post-death behavior. The prosecution walked the jury through the timeline of what Kempson did after Grace died. The intimate photographs of her body, the internet searches for suitcases and fires and remote disposal locations, the Tinder date the following evening, the rental car, the drive to the Waitaki Ranges, the shallow concealment of the suitcase in the bush. None of this, the prosecution argued, was consistent with the behavior of a man devastated by the accidental death of a sexual partner. All of it was consistent with the behavior of a man who had committed murder and was working systematically to cover his tracks. Third, the lie. The prosecution pointed out that Kempson had not called emergency services. He had not called the hotel front desk. He had not contacted anyone for help. When a person dies during a genuine accident, the normal human response is to seek help, to call an ambulance, to attempt resuscitation, to do something. Kempson did none of these things. He took photographs of Grace's body, went to sleep, and woke up the next morning planning her disposal. The prosecution argued that the absence of any attempt to save Grace or report her death was the clearest indication of his intent. Fourth, Kempson's history. While the jury was not given full details of Kempson's prior offending during this trial, the prosecution was able to establish a pattern of behavior, including evidence relating to his internet search history and his interactions with other women, that painted him as a predator rather than a participant in a mutual sexual encounter gone wrong. The defense pushed back. They argued that Kempson had panicked, that his subsequent behavior was driven by fear rather than calculation, that a young man confronted with the accidental death of a woman he barely knew had made terrible decisions driven by terror rather than malice. They argued that the photographs were evidence of sexual behavior, not predation. They argued that the cleaning and disposal were consistent with panic. The jury did not accept this. November 22nd, 2019, Auckland High Court. After approximately 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder. Justice Simon Moore sentenced Jesse Shane Kempson to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Moore addressed Kempson directly. He told him that he had taken a young woman's life, a life full of promise and potential and love, and that he had done so with a callousness that was difficult to comprehend. He noted the post-death behavior as particularly aggravating: the photographs, the disposal, the second date. He noted the impact on Grace's family, who had traveled from England to sit in the courtroom and face the man who had killed their daughter and sister. David Millane was present for the verdict. He sat in the public gallery with his son Declan and listened as the word was read out: guilty. The family had waited a year for this moment, 12 months of grief and uncertainty, and the particular torture of knowing that the man who killed your daughter was claiming it was her fault, that she had asked for it, that she had wanted what happened to her. The verdict was a rejection of that claim. The jury had looked at the evidence, the timeline, the CCTV, the search history, the pathologist's findings, the 5 to 10 minutes of sustained pressure, and they had concluded that this was not an accident. This was murder. This was intentional. This was a man who chose to kill a woman and then chose to hide what he had done. After the verdict, Grace's name became a catalyst. In New Zealand and in the United Kingdom, her case reignited the debate about the so-called rough sex defense, the legal strategy in which defendants accused of killing intimate partners claimed that the death occurred during consensual sexual activity. The strategy had been used in multiple cases across the English-speaking world, and in many of those cases, it had succeeded in reducing murder charges to manslaughter or securing acquittals entirely. The mechanics of the defense are straightforward. The defendant admits that the victim died during sex, but claims the victim consented to the activity that caused the death. The burden then shifts to the prosecution to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the activity was not consensual and that the defendant intended to kill. In cases where the only two people present were the victim and the defendant, and the victim is dead, the prosecution's task becomes extraordinarily difficult. The defendant's version of events is the only version available. This was exactly the defense Kempson attempted. Grace's case became a rallying point for activists and legislators who argued that the rough sex defense was inherently unjust because it exploited the silence of the dead to shift blame onto the victim. In the United Kingdom, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 included provisions that specifically addressed this issue, making it harder for defendants to claim consent as a defense in cases of serious harm or death during sexual activity. The campaign was partly driven by the advocacy of groups like We Can't Consent to This, which had been tracking cases where the rough sex defense was deployed and documenting the pattern of its use. In New Zealand, the conversation centered on Kempson's history and the question of whether the warning signs had been missed. Why had a man with multiple complaints of violence against women been free to meet strangers on dating apps? Why had the system not connected the dots? Why had Grace Millane been the one to pay the price for institutional failures? These questions did not have easy answers, and they have not been fully resolved. But they were asked loudly, publicly, and with Grace's name attached, and that mattered. Her case made visible a pattern that had been operating in the shadows of the legal system for decades. It made it harder to ignore. The appeal. Kempson appealed his conviction. His legal team argued that the trial judge had made errors in his directions to the jury, that certain evidence should not have been admitted, and that the verdict was unsafe. The appeal was heard by the Court of Appeal in 2020. The court dismissed the appeal. Every argument raised by Kempson's defense was considered and rejected. The judges found that the trial had been conducted fairly, that the evidence had been properly admitted, that the jury's verdict was supported by the evidence, and that there were no grounds for overturning the conviction. Kempson remained in prison, serving his life sentence. Subsequent trials revealed the fuller picture of who he was. He was convicted of additional charges relating to violence against other women, charges that had been separated from the murder trial to avoid prejudicing the jury. The convictions confirmed what the prosecution had argued, but could not fully present during Grace's trial. Kempson was not a man who made a single terrible mistake. He was a serial offender, a predator who had used dating platforms to access vulnerable women, and who had been able to continue offending because the system had not caught up with him. The family. The Millane family endured every parent's worst nightmare, and did so with a dignity that made the rest of the world feel inadequate. David Millane became, by circumstance rather than choice, a public figure. He spoke at press conferences. He gave interviews. He attended every day of the trial. He sat in the courtroom while the defense argued that his daughter had asked to be choked, and he did not leave, did not shout, did not break. He listened. He endured. And then he spoke. After Kempson's appeal was dismissed, the family released a statement. It was brief, as the most powerful statements tend to be. They spoke about Grace, about who she was, about what she meant to them, about the life she would have lived if she had been allowed to live it. The statement ended with 7 words that would be repeated in newspapers and broadcasts and social media posts around the world. Grace, you are and will always be our sunshine. That sentence carries the weight of everything. The present tense. You are, not you were. Not past tense, not the language of loss, but the language of continuation. Grace is their sunshine. Still, now, always. The family refused to let Kempson's actions define their daughter in the past tense. She is not a victim in their telling. She is their sunshine, present and permanent. The aftermath in New Zealand. The Grace Millane case changed things. Not everything, and not permanently, because no single case ever does, but it shifted the conversation in ways that are still being felt. It changed the way New Zealand thinks about violence against women. It changed the way the country thinks about dating apps and safety, and the gap between the public face people present online and the reality of who they are in private. It changed the way law enforcement communicates about victims, building on Detective Inspector Beard's early intervention against victim blaming and establishing a clearer standard for how cases of gendered violence are discussed publicly. It changed the way the country thinks about backpackers and visitors, about the promise of safety that New Zealand extends to the world, and about what happens when that promise is broken. The vigils, the white lights on the Sky Tower and the Harbour Bridge, the flowers left at makeshift memorials, all of it was an expression of a country grappling with the fact that it had failed to protect a guest. And it changed the law. Not just in New Zealand, but internationally. The rough sex defense, already under scrutiny, became harder to deploy. Legislators pointed to Grace Millane's case as an example of why the defense was unacceptable, why the dead cannot consent, and why the legal system must not allow killers to weaponize their victims' sexuality as a shield. The timeline that didn't happen. There is another timeline. It exists only in the conditional tense, in the might have been, but it is worth stating because it is the timeline that Grace Millane's family lives with every day. In that timeline, Grace's date on December 1st goes fine. She has a few drinks with a nice New Zealander, they swap numbers, maybe they see each other again, maybe they do not. She goes back to the hostel. She sleeps. She wakes up on December 2nd, her 22nd birthday, and she calls her dad. She FaceTimes the family. They sing. She laughs. She opens the card her mother sent. She posts the birthday selfie. She spends the day exploring Auckland, and then she catches a bus or a flight to the South Island, because Queenstown is next on her list, and Milford Sound, and the glaciers, and she has 2 more weeks, and the world is still enormous and beautiful, and hers. In that timeline, Grace finishes her gap year and comes home to Essex in January or February, tanned and happy and full of stories. She starts her career in advertising. She moves to London maybe, or stays close to her family. She builds a life. She has a career and friendships and relationships and Christmases and all the ordinary, extraordinary things that make up a life lived to its full span. She grows older. She becomes more herself. That timeline does not exist. It was taken, deliberately, by a man who saw a young woman on a screen, swiped right, and killed her within 12 hours of meeting her. The vigil that never ends. On the first anniversary of Grace's death, December 2nd, 2019, vigils were held again in Auckland and across New Zealand. Candles were lit, flowers were laid. Her photograph, the one with the wide smile and the brown hair, was held up against the evening sky. In Wickford, Essex, the Millane family marked the day privately. They did not need a public vigil. Their vigil had been running every day for a year. It would run for every day after that. Grief does not have an anniversary. It does not arrive on a specific date and leave when the candles burn down. It is there in the morning when you wake up and remember. It is there when you see her coat still hanging by the door. It is there on December 2nd. Every December 2nd, when the birthday that should have been a celebration becomes a marker of everything that was stolen. David Millane has spoken publicly about the impact of Grace's death on his family. He has not been graphic. He has not been angry in the way the media sometimes wants bereaved parents to be, the performative rage that makes for a good headline. He has been measured, clear-eyed, and absolutely devastating. He has talked about the silence, the phone that does not ring, the text that does not come, the chair at the table that stays empty. He has talked about the way time folds, the way a single evening in December 2018 rearranged the architecture of his entire life, his family's life, permanently and irreversibly. He has also talked about Grace, not as a victim, not as a case, not as a cautionary tale, as his daughter, as the adventurous one, as the girl who wanted to see everything, as sunshine. The questions that remain: why did Tinder's safety infrastructure not flag Kempson? This question was asked repeatedly in the aftermath of the case and has never been adequately answered. Dating apps operate on a model of minimal verification. Users self-report their names, ages, and photographs. There is no background check, no criminal record screen, no cross-referencing against law enforcement databases. The assumption embedded in the platform's design is that users are who they say they are and that they mean no harm. This assumption is almost always correct. It was catastrophically wrong in Grace Millane's case. In the years since Grace's murder, dating apps have introduced some safety features. Tinder now offers a photo verification system, a panic button in partnership with safety organizations, and the ability to share date details with trusted contacts. Whether these features would have saved Grace is unknowable. Kempson was not using a fake name. He was using his real identity. A background check might have flagged his prior complaints, but dating apps do not run background checks, and the debate about whether they should is still unresolved. The question of systemic failure is broader than any single platform. Kempson had been the subject of multiple complaints from women before he killed Grace. Why had those complaints not resulted in a prosecution that might have kept him off the streets and off dating apps? Why had the dots not been connected? This is a question about policing, about the way violence against women is prioritized within the justice system, about the threshold for action, and about the pattern recognition failures that allow serial offenders to operate in the gaps between individual complaints. These are not questions with simple answers, but they are questions that Grace Millane's death made impossible to avoid. The law after Grace. In the United Kingdom, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 addressed the rough sex defense directly. Section 71 of the Act provides that a person cannot consent to the infliction of serious harm for the purposes of a defense to a charge of assault causing serious harm or murder. The provision was designed to close the loophole that Kempson and others had attempted to exploit. The argument that a victim's alleged consent to risky sexual activity negates the defendant's culpability for the victim's death. The campaign for this provision was led by multiple organizations, but the case of Grace Millane was one of the most frequently cited examples. Her name appeared in parliamentary debates, in media coverage of the legislation, and in the advocacy materials of organizations working to change the law. She became, in death, a symbol of the injustice she had suffered. In New Zealand, the conversation was similar, but took a different legislative path. The country's legal framework already provided that consent is not a defense to murder, but the Millane case prompted a broader discussion about the way sexual history evidence is used in trials, about the adequacy of protections for victims, and about the need for stronger intervention in cases of serial offending. The legislative legacy of Grace Millane's case is still being written. Laws change slowly. Campaigns take years. But the trajectory is clear. Her death accelerated a global reckoning with the rough sex defense, and the legal changes that have followed bear her imprint even when her name is not explicitly cited. 9:45 p.m., December 1st, 2018. Elevator, CityLife Hotel, Auckland. One last time. Go back to the footage, the elevator camera, the grainy blue-tinged image from above. Grace Millane in her black dress, standing next to a man she has known for a few hours, heading up to his floor. She is not afraid. She has no reason to be. She is 21 years old. Tomorrow is her birthday. She has been traveling for 6 weeks, and she has met dozens of people, and nothing bad has happened. Because nothing bad usually happens. Because the vast majority of people in the vast majority of places are decent and safe and mean no harm. She is standing in that elevator the way millions of people stand in elevators every day, with the quiet, settled confidence of someone who believes the world is basically good. She is not naive. She is normal. She is doing what normal people do. She is trusting a stranger because trust is the default setting of human interaction. And without it, nobody would ever leave their house. The doors open. She steps out. She walks down the hallway. She enters the room. The camera captures her until it cannot. The hallway swallows her. The door closes. And that is the last time anyone saw Grace Millane alive. December 2nd, 2018. 12 a.m. Auckland, New Zealand. Happy birthday, Grace. The city sleeps. The harbour glitters. The Sky Tower stands against the sky like a needle threading the darkness. Somewhere in the CBD, the bars are closing and the streets are emptying, and the warm summer air carries the sound of laughter and footsteps and the distant hum of traffic. Grace is 22 years old. She will never know it. Her family's words, the ones they released after the final appeal was dismissed, carry the weight of everything that was lost and everything that endures. Grace, you are and will always be our sunshine. Not was, are. Present tense. Permanent tense. The tense that grief insists on because love does not recognize the past. Love does not conjugate. Love does not accept the finality of what happened in a hotel room in Auckland on a warm December night. Grace Millane is her family's sunshine. Still. Now. Always. And no verdict, no sentence, no appeal, no law. And no amount of time will ever change the fact that she should have turned 22 and called her dad and told him about New Zealand and come home with stories and a tan and a life ahead of her that stretched out to the horizon, like the view from the top of a mountain she would never climb. The clock has stopped. The story does not end. Grace, you are and will always be